know that Sonic the Hedgehog does not like Twinkle Park? Take a look at this Sonic Channel art right here. Doesn't Sonic look extremely thrilled to be going to Twinkle Park? I mean, granted, it does make sense since Amy Rose did force him to go there, but it's more than that. Sonic really hates Twinkle Park. Here's how I know. So here we are in the entrance of Twinkle Park with Sonic right here. Let's shift through the idle dialogue and see what he has to say about his surroundings.
Better get going. I'm not too fond of places like this.
It's true, Sonic does not like Twinkle Park. Did you know that Sonic the Hedgehog was on the very first cover of Game Informer? Game Informer was a monthly video game magazine that featured articles, news, strategy, and reviews of video games and game consoles. Some of you who have ever been to a GameStop may remember over the years getting some of these magazines in the mail. The original publisher of the magazine was Funko Land, but they were acquired by GameStop in 2000, and in 2024, they actually discontinued the Game Informer magazine series. While this was very disappointing for gamers due to the overwhelming amount of nostalgia that a lot of people have for the company, it was eventually brought back in March of 2025. So while the legendary magazine series continues on, Sonic the Hedgehog was on the very first cover after the release of the first Sonic game. But that isn't the only Sonic related fact for Game Informer. Did you know that they also did an article for a fake Sonic game called Sonic Reborn? The article about the game in question was of course released in April of 2011, and based off of this picture of the game, it kind of looks like a sequel to Shadow the Hedgehog. So, what exactly was Sonic Reborn about? Well, it says, same hedgehog, new edge. A lone figure staggers across the ruins of the Scrap Brain Zone. His cheeks are caked in mud, and blood seeps through his mangled blue fur. He is vulnerable, but his green eyes still hold the spark of defiance that has enthralled gamers since the early 90s. Behold the new face of Sonic the Hedgehog. This gritty reboot will have you questioning everything you thought you knew about Sonic. Reborn is about survival, not speed, and delves into an emotional portrait of what it means to be a hedgehog. After the Eggman plague wipes out 80% of the world's population, the 19-year-old Sonic is left to fend for himself in the wasteland, fighting off hordes of robo-ghouls. The tension is thrilling, and fleeing isn't an option since psychological trauma prevents Sonic from ever breaking into a run. Forget spin jumps and loop-de-loops as you search for tarnished rings, figments of Sonic's fractured mind that represent a broken engagement. Your only weapons are improvised shivs and your hedgehog wits. This makes Reborn the most mature Sonic to date. Almost sounds in a way like the Sonic IDW Metal Virus saga, but anyways, let's move on to the next one. Did you know that for Sonic Movie 3, Sonic X was used as reference for some of the character modelers? Perhaps a hot take, but Sonic X truly is my favorite Sonic show of all time. Perhaps you could say certain aspects of the show didn't age as well, but I think if there's one thing that we can all agree on, or probably not because this is the internet after all and we are Sonic fans, but I think that this show had the most accurate portrayal of Sonic's character. So take a good look at this cocky smirk right here. According to Alan Bolkus, one of the VFX artists for Sonic Movie 3, he said he just got the green light to share a couple of rendered sequences that he did for Sonic 3. This is one of the character expression exploration each character went through. Grateful for the opportunity to help define the look of what became a $500 million box office success. So take a look at some of the rendered expressions for Sonic in the third movie. And while nothing of note pops up yet, if you look right here, let's pause it. What just popped on the screen for a second? Yes, that is Sonic X and his iconic smirk. And we actually got a look at movie Sonic doing the little Nike check side smirk. Although it looks kind of weird from the front, from the side, it doesn't look bad. Here's the next fact, or debunked misconception, if you will. The mysterious quote-unquote Sonic Frontiers 2 artwork is actually not Sonic Frontiers 2 artwork. If you're a Sonic fan on Twitter, you will notice behind this Sega employee right here, this image of Sonic running around in what many people thought was Sonic Frontiers 2. However, on March 19th, 2025, it was finally debunked by Sega themselves when they tweeted out the full image. Now we have full context as to what it is. Take a look at this image right here. It looks pretty unfamiliar, right? Or does it? Now take a look at this image from Sonic Forces. Essentially, what this image is just a recolor of a picture from Sonic Forces. So every Sonic fan's heart was broken when they found out that this wasn't Frontiers 2 concept art. The next fact, Fang the Sniper was also known as Jet in different localizations. So Fang originally made his debut in Sonic Triple Trouble as an adversary to Sonic, but he wasn't always known as Fang. Some of you may even know him as Knack the Weasel. The reason why he has so many different names, as explained in the Sonic canon, is because he doesn't want people to know who he is, because he's a notorious criminal after all. But there is one name that not many people are familiar with when it comes to this character, and that is Jet. A Sonic the Hedgehog adversary known as Jet? Where have we seen that before? Perhaps one of Fang's original nicknames could have been the basis for inspiration for Jet the Hawk, but I don't actually know that. That's just speculation on my part. Take a look at this Sega magazine from the 90s that features Sonic Chaos 2, which is now known as Sonic Triple Trouble. In the article at the bottom, you will notice that they call Fang Jet the Sniper. When looking at a 1994 UK magazine, if you look at the bottom, it says that there's a new character making his debut, and that is Jet. So he was known as Jet, he was known as Knack, he was known as Fang. Another recent Sonic IDW classic comic also referred to him as Jet the Jerboa as well when explaining why he went by so many names. Which is why this fact is actually not as obscure as it used to be, but I'm sure some of you didn't know this. And hey, while we're on the topic of this disgusting evil rodent that ruined many lives in Sonic Superstars, let's talk about another fact about Fang. Did you know that Fang the Sniper was supposed to be in Sonic Extreme? Sonic Extreme was an unreleased platformer in the Sonic the Hedgehog series and was supposed to be Sonic's big leap into 3D and be his answer to Mario 64. This game looked like absolute dog shit. Many people blame the cancellation of Sonic Extreme due to the failure of the Sega Saturn. But in this game, it's actually interesting to note that Fang the Sniper was supposed to make an appearance. If you look at this image right here of Sonic Extreme, Fang was actually supposed to be a boss fight in the game. Unfortunately, this game never saw the light of day, so we can only wonder exactly how it was going to perform. The next fact, Amy Rose was also supposed to be in Sonic Extreme. So Fang the Sniper wasn't the only other Sonic character to appear in the canceled Sonic Extreme game. We also found models for Amy Rose. According to Ross Harris, who was the lead artist for Sonic Extreme at the time, he made this information available on his LinkedIn account and shared a model sheet for Amy Rose. She looks a little bit different than her classic counterpart, but overall maintains pretty much the same design. We also got a model sheet for Sonic the Hedgehog as well. The next fact, did you know that Sonic the Hedgehog has a cameo in the new Black Mirror season? So Black Mirror is a show on Netflix, which is basically like, what if technology was bad or something? All right, all jokes aside, I do kind of like the show, but there was a new trailer for season 7 and they talk about Sonic. Let's roll it.
These are living individuals, and not some obscene puppets like Sonic the Hedgehog.
My man Sonic caught the craziest strays I've ever seen in my life. Here's the next fact. You can actually play as Maria in Shadow the Hedgehog 2005. One of my favorite things to do back in the day growing up playing Shadow the Hedgehog was plugging in a second controller and taking over as the side character that follows Shadow around. You can play as pretty much every character. And when we say every character, we mean every character. Except for Black Doom, Dr. Eggman, and a fan favorite character, Charmy Bee. But who's keeping count? It's kind of similar to the old school Genesis games like in Sonic 2, how you could plug in the controller and play as Tails as well. Good to see that Sega stuck to their roots. So believe it or not, in Shadow the Hedgehog, Maria is actually one of the characters that follows you around. So if you play one of the levels where Maria is one of the side characters and you plug in the second controller, she can actually be taken control of and she can throw punches. Unfortunately, just like the actual Sonic series, Maria is not immune to the gun soldiers, and if she touches them, she will get hurt. Here's the next fact. In Tails Sky Patrol, you were originally going to have to fight Disney characters. Before Sonic Movie 3 versus Mufasa, there was Tails Sky Patrol, an 8-bit game for the Sega Game Gear. Early screenshots from the April 1995 edition of Sega Video Magazine shows a prototype of Tails Sky Patrol, and Tails appears to be fighting Pete from the Mickey Mouse series. For those of you who don't know what he looks like, this is what he looks like. The early prototype footage was obtained from the Ruined Wood area, and this is what the final shot looks like in the game, but there's some evidence that suggests that this game was never actually supposed to be a Sonic the Hedgehog game. It was actually supposed to have a Disney license, but that is technically unconfirmed. Did you know that there are real cats in Sonic Unleashed? So everybody knows the Sonic franchise has a couple of famous cats such as Blaze, and how can we forget the favorite cat of the franchise, Big the Cat? But in Sonic Unleashed, if you go into the Apatos hub world and you go right over here where a moon medal would be, you can see 2 cats right there. Look at them. They're so cute. Can I touch them? No, we can't. But that's a cool fact. I wonder why those cats can't talk like Blaze and Big can. In the 2012 remaster of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, the reason why Sega changed the cross on the health item box was due to the Red Cross organization. Now, if you've ever played the mech shooting stages in Sonic Adventure 2, you're probably not unfamiliar with these item boxes right here, which give you health when you're playing the shooting stages. Prior to the 2012 HD version of the game, this is what the health boxes actually looked like. And if you notice in the middle, it has the Red Cross. The reason for this is because the Red Cross started cracking down on unauthorized use of their logo because they did not want people to reduce the severity or gravity of what the image meant. Hence, the reason why they changed it for SA2. Here's the next fact. Shadow the Hedgehog has a gun because of weird fan requests. Perhaps one of the most insane aspects about Shadow the Hedgehog from 2005 is the fact that he carried a gun, but there's a very specific reason for this. At the time, the head of Sonic Team was Yuji Naka, and his reasoning for giving Shadow this weapon was a ton of kids would write letters to Sega asking them to give Sonic a gun, but due to the fact that he was their marketable, lovable hero, it didn't really make sense to give him a gun, so they came up with the perfect solution in response to these fan requests, and they gave it to Shadow the Hedgehog. Clearly, it's been on Sega's radar to include some type of gun gameplay for the Sonic characters since they've been outsourcing it to people like E102 Gamma, the shooting stages with Tails and Eggman in SA2, but ultimately people would not be satisfied until one of the hedgehogs was holding a gun, so we gave it to Shadow. Here's the next fact. There is an unreleased Sonic game called Sega Sonic Bros. Not to be confused, of course, with Super Mario Bros. Sega Sonic Bros was an unreleased video game in the Sonic the Hedgehog series, and for a very long time was considered to be lost media. This game was developed in 1992, but actual gameplay from it did not surface until July 2018. It's very similar to that Tetris, Dr. Mario, Puyo Puyo puzzle falling board type gameplay. And while it's not really a revolutionary game, it's still pretty cool that this eventually surfaced nonetheless. Here's the next fact. There were more episodes of Sonic X planned for the GBA, but they were canceled. So back in the day in the Game Boy Advance, they released something called Game Boy Advance Video, which allowed you to use Game Boy Advance cartridges, and if you plugged them into your Game Boy, you could actually watch episodes of your favorite TV shows on the go. There was one volume release for the popular Sonic anime Sonic X, and it included the first 2 episodes, and it's called A Super Sonic Hero. I had this myself. Volume 2 of Sonic X, called Chaos Emerald Chaos, was planned to be released for the Game Boy Advance Video, but unfortunately it was canceled for whatever reason. The concept for the creation of Sonic was actually a ball. As stated by the programmer Yuji Naka, the prototype for Sonic was a basic character just rolling through a tube inside of a life-size ball. If you think about it, the concept for the creation of Sonic the Hedgehog kind of sounds similar to Super Monkey Ball. As a matter of fact, he's actually playable in the game. This basic premise ended up being the system in which Sonic gameplay was developed and how the physics were made. As a matter of fact, there's no better example of the quote-unquote ball in a tube prototype that they had for Sonic than Chemical Plant. One of the reasons why Sonic the Hedgehog is blue is to match Sega's logo. So guys, this may be the ultimate test. According to my eyes, the logo of Sega is blue. And assuming my eyes don't deceive me and I've been colorblind and wrong my whole life, Sonic the Hedgehog is also blue. Naoto Oshima is one of the creators of Sonic, and he says the reason why Sonic's iconic color was purely chosen because Sega wanted him to match their logo color. Another reason why Sonic got this color and he was selected as Sega's mascot is because the company ran an in-house competition to see who could come up with the best idea. Clearly, the best idea was Sonic the Hedgehog, and that was from Naoto Oshima himself. Sonic the Hedgehog was conceptualized to have a sixth sense. If you've ever watched one of the most iconic Sonic cutscenes ever, which was the intro to Sonic CD, you will notice that in one of the frames, Sonic sneezes. The reason for this is that Sonic would have a sixth sense that would allow him to sense danger, so he would sneeze. As a matter of fact, there's even a hidden sprite that was featured in Sonic CD as well, although this did not make it into the final product. At one point in time, Sonic was depicted to be older than Knuckles. Once upon a time, before the widespread adoption of the internet, game companies used to give out manuals to players. These manuals would not only give you information about the game and how to play it, but also amazing artwork. They would give you lore, information, and fun facts about the character, but in a lot of instances of the Sonic the Hedgehog games, they would tell you how old the characters are. Sonic Jam was released in 1997 for the Sega Saturn, and this game was a collection of Sonic's history. So there was an in-game feature where you can go to the museum and check out some of the character bios. Just like Sonic 3 and Knuckles' manual, Knuckles is depicted to be age 15. In the same exact place where you could find Knuckles' character bio, you will also see Sonic's, and it says that he's 16. Most people know that Knuckles is canonically depicted to be age 16, so it's not really a big deal that he was 15 in the classic era because that was the past. But if you look at the Sonic Heroes manual, it says that Sonic is 15 and Knuckles is 16, so they basically reversed ages. There's a secret message that can be discovered in Sonic 1 via cheat code. In an act of rebellion against Sega's prohibition of post-game credits, Yuji Naka included a displayed list of names that had all the parties responsible for creating the original Sonic game. This right here is what the credits look like, but the thing is, this is hidden. In the opening intro screen for the original Sonic game where it says Sonic Team Presents, if you type in a cheat code, it will allow the text to actually be visible. If you don't type in the cheat code, the text is black, which blends in with the background. There's a rumor that states that Tails was supposed to have blue shoes. So this right here is original Sonic the Hedgehog line work, but the coloring for the characters was done by a fan. This image went viral, which led a lot of people to believe that Tails was originally supposed to have blue shoes. Judy Totoya is the original creator of Tails, and he was actually asked about Tails having blue shoes in concept. Someone said, "Hi, just wondering, what's your opinion on this? There's some people that think Tails was originally intended to have blue shoes," and he responded and said, "I drew the line art for that picture, but it's the first time I've seen the wrong painted image. I don't know who did the painting. The color of the shoes is red from the beginning." Shadow the Hedgehog's super form was supposed to be a different color. If you look at the original Super Shadow in SA2, I like how the characters are metallic here, by the way, but Shadow has a little bit more of like a yellowish gold tint. Originally, this was not supposed to be the case. Super Shadow was supposed to be silver, so he would have looked a little something like this. Do you guys like this better than the current Super Shadow? Not sure. Nazo was originally supposed to be in Sonic X, so most people recognize this character from the iconic Sonic fan animation, but this is actually not where he originated. He was officially supposed to be in the series. At the end of an old trailer for the Sonic X show, this character appeared at the end. Allegedly, it was supposed to be either a redesign for Super Sonic or potentially a new form, but this is not a separate character. This is actually Sonic. Maybe it was supposed to be the reintroduction to Hypersonic. Sonic, but it was scrapped, so it doesn't even matter. The original name for Sonic was going to derive from Lightspeed. In an interview, Yuji Naka was asked about the name Sonic and how they created it. His response to the question says, "We wanted something that would convey an image of speed. We liked the idea of Kosuku, Lightspeed in Japanese, but we couldn't find a good nickname with the words Lightspeed. We thought about Raisupi, which is a Japanese shortening of Ratio Supido and LS, but they didn't have any ring to them. Finally, someone came up with the idea of the speed of sound, and that led us to Sonic." There's an old Sonic the Hedgehog 1 advertisement that features something very similar to the Death Egg. The Death Egg was first introduced to us in the second Sonic game. There is no mention or visual of the Death Egg in Sonic 1. However, in this old commercial that starts with Sega Sonic the Hedgehog, by the way, and is fully animated, features a scene where Sonic is flying over to what looks to be the Death Egg. I am not 100% sure of the exact date where this commercial aired, but ultimately it is kind of interesting that there's no Death Egg in the Sonic series up until this point, but it's featured in an advertisement for Sonic 1. The first time Sonic ever spoke was in an arcade spin-off. The game that Sonic has his first voice lines in is Waku Waku Sonic Patrol Car, and it features Sonic as a police officer, but also it's like an interactable ride. When you play this quote-unquote game, you get a little video that plays, and this is what Sonic sounded like.
やあ、みんなこんにちは。俺の名前はソニック。俺の仕事は悪い奴を捕まえること。つまり、おまわりさんってわけさ。早速今日も街の平和を守るため、パトロールにファイ
Dr. Eggman also had voice lines in this game as well.
わしの名はドクターエッグマン。邪魔な車は踏み潰すぞい。やめろ、エッグマン。ソニック、邪魔な奴ね。これでもくらえ。
Here's the next fact. In Sonic Mania, the Press Garden Zone was supposed to have a different name. Sonic Mania is a huge fan favorite game, and Press Garden Act is also a fan favorite level featured in the game. Allegedly, Press Garden Zone in Sonic Mania was originally supposed to be named Pulp Solstice Zone, which is kind of odd, honestly. In May 2017, a screenshot of what appears to be an unseen Sonic Mania level was used in a poster for Sega at a Las Vegas licensing expo. Clearly, in hindsight, this was meant to be Press Garden Act, but it certainly does look a little bit different, especially when you look at the sun, but also this area wasn't featured in the actual game. In addition to that, more evidence pointing towards the fact of this being an early name is due to the fact that in the music folder of the game's zone themes, this is called Pulp Solstice 1 and Pulp Solstice 2. In Sonic Adventure, Big the Cat is the only character you can unlock without meeting him in a cutscene. In my opinion, one of the most incredible and immersive aspects of Sonic Adventure, when I played it growing up, was the interactive hub world. One of the coolest things about the game is that you had 6 different stories going on at once, and sometimes during these intersecting stories, you would see the other playable characters in the hub world and you can actually speak to them. After completing the casino stage in SA1, in the hub world, you can actually walk up and find Big the Cat prior to seeing him ever in a cutscene. This will actually trigger an unlock for him, unlike the other characters where you have to meet them in a cutscene before they're playable. In the 8-bit version of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, the level title screens feature the Sega Genesis sprites. So in the 8-bit version of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, obviously the sprite in-game is different than the one that appears in the Sonic Genesis games. By looking at the side-by-side comparison, you can clearly see the difference. Prior to starting the levels in this game, a little title screen will pop up, which features the Sega Genesis sprites for the characters, and I believe this is the Sonic 1 sprite, ironically. Not really sure why they didn't just keep it consistent and use one style of sprite, but let's move on to the next one. The old advertisement for Sonic Adventure 1, Big the Cat and Amy are seen in the beta version of Windy Valley despite not being playable in those levels. So perhaps 2 facts in one, but for those of you who don't know, Windy Valley has an unused version that was scrapped for Sonic Adventure 1. And in addition to that, Big the Cat and Amy are not playable in Windy Valley in the final version of the game. If you take a look at these ancient photos, you'll see various shots of Windy Valley from the beta from prototype advertisement footage. We see Big the Cat running through this level, as well as Amy running through with her hammer. It's always interesting to kind of see this scrapped content come to life. Not sure if they were originally planned for the stages, or this was just meant to show off the game, but regardless, it does exist. In Sonic Unleashed, there are unused animations for things that don't even appear in the game. As the name of the unused animation suggests, this is called Sonic climbing up a ladder. However, there are no ladders featured in the game, so this was clearly a scrapped feature. In addition to that, the game also has a turbo animation, so perhaps this could have been a stronger version of the boost. Sky Chase in Sonic Adventure featured a scrapped dragon boss. So, you may have not known this, but based off of this picture right here, there was a 2-headed mecha dragon that was supposed to be in Sky Chase, and the boss was originally supposed to attempt to stop Sonic and Tails as they made their approach to the egg carrier. This enemy was seen in a beta of SADX and it was leaked online, and the enemy could also do a fire breathing fire-breathing attack. Sonic Heroes was originally meant to have 18 playable characters. Sonic Heroes is one of those games that you either love or hate. Personally, it's one of the first Sonic games that I ever played, so it will always hold a special place in my heart, and I do like it a lot. While it's somewhat similar to the adventure formula in terms of the way that you progress through the stages, get from point A to point B, it definitely plays different, and the core gimmick of this game is really that you control 3 different characters at once. And as a matter of fact, the game did hold a Guinness World Record for most playable characters in a platformer game, and that number could have actually been higher. So it released with 12, but according to Shiro Meikawa, he says that the initial plan for Sonic Heroes included 18 characters, and the team divisions were something like this: Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, Cream, and Rouge, Chaos, E102, Big, Espio, Charmy, Vector, Fang, Bean, Bark, Metal Sonic, Ray, and Mighty. Another fun fact is that Cream and Rouge were supposed to be on the same team despite both being flight characters, so someone asked which one would have been the flight character, and it would have been Cream. Notice how Shadow the Hedgehog was notably absent, and that's because he was supposed to be dead after Sonic Adventure 2, so I find that pretty interesting as well. Also, another thing that I find pretty crazy about this is that Mighty and Ray were supposed to be on the same team as Metal Sonic. There are tons of unused voice lines for Sonic Heroes, and one of which includes a Big the Cat insult by Dr. Eggman. So it's no secret that Sonic Heroes had definitely an interesting development timeline, and there's tons of unused content that didn't make it into the final game. Tons of voice clips that you guys can look up, but there's one that really stood out to me in particular. And this relates to Dr. Eggman insulting Big the Cat. Let's take a listen.
Ah! This is no place for little girls or a big fat cat.
Man, that was pretty brutal, but I guess if you think about it, technically it was Neo Metal Sonic impersonating Dr. Eggman. But let's move on to the next one. Sonic Colors contains unused Sonic abilities that are actually from Sonic Unleashed. Sonic Unleashed definitely has a couple abilities that you may not even know exist, partly due to the fact that this game is extremely fast. But if you hold down the B button and move the stick forward, Sonic will start crawling around for whatever reason. While the crawling ability is probably not that obscure, if you start spamming the B button, Sonic will start doing a spin kick, and this is something you may have not seen before, because really in this game I can't think of a scenario where you would ever need to use this. But despite the fact that Sonic cannot perform these abilities in Sonic Colors, for whatever reason they are still contained within the game files, so I do find it interesting that some of these assets do get left over and somehow make it into the next game. Allegedly, the original design for Tails was supposed to be a Tanuki, so basically something like this. When asked about interesting stories for Sonic sequels, Yuji Naga said at the beginning of Sonic 2 development, Tails was actually a Tanuki. He was modeled after a UFO catcher plushie, but it just looked clumsy, and they wanted to come up with something a little bit better, so Yasushi Yamaguchi created a fox design, which would be the basis for Tails. So essentially, the conceptualization for Tails was created from a plushie from this machine right here. However, the creator for Tails came out and actually said that he was always meant to be a fox, so maybe there's a miscommunication between the two. There's an official scrapped Metal Shadow design. Metal Sonic is often viewed as one of the greatest rivals for Sonic the Hedgehog. He's meant to be a spitting image or a clone of Sonic, just with really all of his worst characteristics. And of course, he's evil. But metal versions of the characters have always fascinated fans. People have wanted a Metal Shadow. Turns out there kind of is one, technically. It has been confirmed, though, that there is a scrapped version of what a Metal Shadow would have looked like, and this is the artwork from Tracy Yardley. If anything, this roboticized hedgehog looks a lot more similar to Metal Sonic than Shadow does to the actual Sonic. According to the artist that was responsible for the official Metal Shadow drawing, it was meant to appear in the Sonic comic encyclopedia that was released in 2012. Presumably, he probably would have appeared in this section with the Metal series, but for whatever reason just didn't make it into the final product. Official Sonic Mania developers have released concept art of what a Sonic Mania 2 would have looked like. Christian Whitehead is a developer who worked on the original Sonic mobile ports as well as Sonic Mania. On his social media, he shared this post. He said, "It is now the 8th anniversary of Mania, so time to dig up some Sonic trivia. This year is Kanga Klanga, aka the Kangas. This lovable Robo-Roo originally lived in the Outback, but now entertains us all in Pinball Carnival Zone," referring to this badnik right here. But alongside that, he showed unreleased concept art of a classic Sonic game that was developed post-Sonic Mania. So here is the artwork. What it looks to be is a 2.5D game similar to Sonic Superstars, but obviously this never saw the light of day. From the outset, I think the artwork looks absolutely incredible here and looks extremely stylized in a way that Sonic Superstars isn't. Here's also another image of classic Sonic running towards the badnik, who eventually made an appearance in Sonic Superstars, so it wasn't all lost. T. Lopes, the legendary composer for Sonic Mania, also commented and said, "What could have been, but never was. Wonder if there's some lost music too," to which he actually released a soundtrack of what this song would have sounded like. it, the concept for Shadow the Hedgehog dates all the way back to the first Sonic Adventure game. During an interview for the 20th anniversary of Sonic the Hedgehog, Takashi Iizuka, one of the series producers, was asked about the conceptualization of Shadow. In the interview, it says, clearly, when you directed Sonic Adventure 2, he was only intended for that one game, but were you surprised as to how popular he's become? Iizuka said, the Shadow character idea was something that we all had in our minds in the dev team when we were creating the first Sonic Adventure. When creating that game, we had the intention of creating a rival character for Sonic Adventure 2, and we didn't really talk about it that much, but we all were thinking about it. As you know, in the story, Shadow was only meant to appear in the single title, but because of the reaction of the fans, we decided to bring him back in Sonic Heroes, and eventually you saw him in his own title. So it is pretty interesting that the concept for Shadow actually predates SA2. Could you imagine a Sonic Adventure that features Shadow as well thrown into the mix? But ultimately, the rest was history, and Shadow still went on to become the most popular character in the franchise. Let's move on to the next one. Did you know that during conceptualization, the original Sonic Adventure game could have been for the Sega Saturn? If you take a look at these photos right here, this is what Sonic Adventure was conceptualized to look like if it was released on the Sega Saturn, featuring the Sonic R or Sonic Jam model. For some reason, these photos give me a sense of nostalgia and comfort, despite the fact that it never actually existed. In a 1999 Sonic Adventure development interview, Yuji Naka, one of the original Sonic programmers, said that we had to decide whether to make it for the Sega Saturn or the Dreamcast. Before that decision was made, I actually felt the Saturn might be better for this game. No doubt, making it for the Dreamcast was the right call and is the reason we produced something of such quality. But in turn, I wanted to do something for Saturn users too, and that's how Sonic Jam and the Sonic R projects came about. In Sonic Unleashed, depending on which direction the camera is facing, Sonic will smile when he's on a grind rail. Oh, we're currently on a grind rail right now, and if you look at Sonic right here, his mouth has a little smirk, but if you go over to the left and change the camera, he opens his mouth with a nice big smile. And this is solely based off of which direction the camera is facing for whatever reason. I'm not sure why exactly this is the case, but certainly something interesting. In Sonic Adventure 2, there's a secret test stage that you can access. So, like many other video games, Sonic Adventure 2 has a secret test stage that you can access. The stage is pretty basic, features a couple of different platforming objects as well as some slopes you can go down. In order to access this stage, in Crazy Gadget, you have to like get a Chow key and then like miss a checkpoint or something like that. So people say that it's possible to do this, and while I personally attempted to do it myself, I had no success with it, but there's tons of footage of people getting into it, so it seems like it is true. According to the game files, allegedly, Neo Metal Sonic was going to have an invisibility attack during the final boss fight. And this totally makes sense. The reason why is that Neo Metal Sonic copies the data of all 12 Sonic characters in the game. So if you look at the unused voice clips, you'll hear these lines from Super Sonic, Super Tails, and Super Knuckles specifically.
He's gone!
Where'd he go?
Watch out, everybody!
So, while these three characters who fight Neo Metal Sonic say these lines about invisibility, the one that makes the most sense is that Espio, the character that can actually go invisible, is the one that says this.
Even when he's invisible, he'll briefly appear when he attacks. Pay close attention so you can locate his position.
Pre-ordering a copy of Mario Kart Double Dash for the GameCube would give you a Sonic Heroes demo. Yes, it's true. Pre-ordering this Mario game would give you a copy of a Sonic the Hedgehog game. Pretty crazy. This is what the bonus disc looked like. So this was included with the purchase of Mario Kart, and it included 5 playable demos. One for Mario Party 5, F-Zero GX, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Star Wars Rogue Squadron, and of course, Sonic Heroes. In Sonic Frontiers, if you go far back enough from Giganto, he will stop moving. All right, looks like step 1 is to get to the top of Giganto. There he is. Go ahead and get the Chaos Emerald. Go Super Sonic, and let's see if this actually works. You know, we're gonna go back here, and we get to listen to Undefeatable, which is the best part about this, but it seems like it's true. If you just stay back here, Giganto will just stare at you the entire time. So yeah, that's a pretty cool fact. Did you know that Blaze the Cat has an official Sonic Advance style spray? The Sonic Advance spray is one of the most iconic designs for Sonic of all time, especially if you grew up on the internet in the 2000s. Hello, Super Mario Bros. Z, anyone? This style of sprite was featured in the Sonic Advance games, but guess who was not in the Sonic Advance games? That's right, Blaze the Cat, but this didn't stop Sega from actually creating an official sprite for that art style for this specific character. Blaze the Cat's first appearance in the Sonic franchise was Sonic Rush, where they opted for 3D models rather than traditional 2D sprites. However, if you beat Sonic Rush and make it to the credits in Blaze's story, for whatever reason in the credits of the game, they created a 2D Sonic Advance style sprite for Blaze. So while she was never in the Advance games, if she was ever to be in them, this is exactly what she would have looked like. As a matter of fact, they did the same thing for Sonic in his credits, where he's running away from Amy and they're both in their Advance style artwork sprites. Sonic Racing Crossworlds is actually canon. So recently we got a trailer for Sonic Racing Crossworlds DLC, which features 2 characters from the IDW comics, Tangle and Whisper. But we recently just discovered that Racing Crossworlds is canon because of this. The reason being is that somebody tweeted at the Sonic lore manager and said, not really that it's important, but do you think that these 2 were canonically invited to Crossworlds Grand Prix, or are they just under the umbrella of bonus non-canonical additions like the rest of the DLC characters? To which the lore manager of Sonic said that they are as canon as the other Sonic characters, which 1 confirms Tangle and Whisper are canon, and 2 confirms that Sonic Racing Crossworlds is canon. The game Baldi's Basics was based off of Sonic's Schoolhouse. Baldi's Basics in Education and Learning is a 2018 puzzle horror game disguised as an educational game. You might notice by looking at the aesthetic of that game, it looks extremely similar to the most popular and greatest video game of all time, Sonic's Schoolhouse. And that's because it is. Not only taking a look at some of the aesthetics of the game, but if you look at side-by-side images of both games, you can see that the inspiration is certainly there. The creator of the game listed Sonic's Schoolhouse as one of his inspirations. The game was mainly meant as a parody of those early 90s educational games and the unsettling feeling that he would feel when playing them.
Hi there. I'm Sonic the Hedgehog. You're going to play in my schoolhouse. If you've ever got a problem, find me and I'll help.
Okay, maybe the creator of Baldi's Basics was definitely onto something with this one. Prior to the release of Sonic 06, an early script as well as character write-ups were leaked, and it revealed Sonic Team's Dragon Ball Z influence. It goes without saying that Sonic 06 is definitely the most infamous Sonic game of all time, and this was the debut game of Silver the Hedgehog. One of the early character bios for Silver the Hedgehog leaked out, and what it said was pretty interesting. In addition to an early concept of what Silver looked like, which was slightly different than his final design, it said, Silver is a young male hedgehog who has traveled through time to change a ruined future. Despite coming from such a grim world, he is very forthright and is focused on restoring peace to the world. He's also able to get riled up, and this time around, he's going after Mephiles. He possesses some special powers which can draw upon the emeralds. It is unknown how he got these powers though. Essentially, think Trunks from Dragon Ball Z. Not that Sega's influence from Dragon Ball Z is very obscure, but it is pretty interesting to see them just come outright and say it. Early concept art for Sonic Frontiers shows Giganto being built on Chaos Island. So in Sonic Frontiers on Chaos Island, obviously the boss that you fight is Knight, and throughout no point in the game do you actually see Giganto in Chaos Island, but in concept art that didn't stop him from appearing there. If you haven't had a chance to take a look at Frontiers concept art, it is truly breathtaking. Some of the visuals that they had for the game look extremely exciting. I think my favorite is probably this shot of Kronos Island. It looks absolutely stunning. It even produces an extremely terrifying visual of Giganto. But I think the coolest one that they created was the Chaos Island one. The art style here looks a lot more lively, but if you look in the background, you'll see Giganto actually being constructed. And if you look at Sonic's model, it kind of looks like it was inspired by the 06 model with the longer quills, but obviously they ended up going with the Forces model. Gerald Robotnik's render in Sonic and Shadow Generations was inspired by his concept art from Sonic Adventure 2. During the release hype for Sonic and Shadow Generations, I think it was extremely shocking to see that Maria and Gerald Robotnik were going to be featured in the game, bringing up Shadow's traumatic past, and having Shadow actually face it head on. So if you take a look at the official render for Gerald Robotnik, he's doing this weird little pose, but if you look at the concept art for his creation in Sonic Adventure 2, this is the pose that he's doing, and this is what he was originally supposed to look like. It looks a little more Eggman-y, if that's even a word, and I almost kind of like how this looks better, but let's move on to the next one. In Sonic Racing Crossworlds, Tango the Lemur has a pose that references IDW cover art. So, as discussed earlier in the video, in February 2026, Tango the Lemur and Whisper are coming to Sonic Racing Crossworlds DLC. If you watch the trailer that Sega released, there's a pose that Tangle hits, which is an exact reference to one of the cover arts from IDW. So, if you pause one of the frames from the DLC trailer, you'll see Tangle jumping up, kicking her foot out, and then having her tail extend backwards. This is not a coincidence. If you take a look at Sonic IDW issue 24 cover B, you'll see Tangle hitting the exact same pose. In addition to that, it's pretty cool that they also reference Sonic Advance sprite work, but this is where the pose originates from. Amy Rose's debut in the Sonic franchise was actually well before Sonic CD. The debut appearance of Amy Rose in the Sonic the Hedgehog video games was 1993's Sonic CD, and many people attribute this game to her first appearance in the franchise in general, but that isn't the case. The first appearance of Amy Rose in the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise is the 1992 Sonic mangas. These mangas debuted a year and a half before Sonic CD's release, which in turn makes Amy Rose one of the longest running characters in the franchise, and she even predates Tails. There's official Sonic channel artwork that depicts a super Dr. Eggman. It's generally understood understood that the rule in the Sonic franchise is that only male hedgehogs have a super form, at least as far as the actual canon of the series goes. But that did not stop Sega in December of 2023 of creating Dr. Eggman going super and battling Super Sonic. Honestly, I wonder how powerful he truly is. There is an official Sonic Underground game. Sonic Underground is a pretty weird 1990s show which features Sonic and his two other siblings trying to find their mother. It also features a banger of a theme song, but what if I told you that there was a game for this TV show? LCD games were pretty popular back in the day, and Tiger Electronics in the year 2000 released this Sonic Underground video game. I think my favorite part about this game is that it features Sonic on the outside playing the guitar. The buttons are inside of the guitar, but the gameplay was pretty simple. You had a spin dash button, a jump button, and you had to defeat robots and go side to side. These games were not really that complex, but nonetheless, this is a gem from back in the day. In tons of Sonic Channel artwork, there are hidden Big the Cat references. Over the years, it has become Sega tradition to hide Big the Cat in random places in Sonic games. Now, you really have to ask yourself how Big ends up finding himself in these type of situations. But Sonic Channel art is no different. What do you notice about this picture of Knuckles and Rouge on Halloween? Well, look in the corner, it's Big. Or this picture of Blaze the Cat in the Soul Dimension. Well, if you look above here, there's a portrait of Big. Or this picture of Shadow the Hedgehog. Can you find Big? Yeah, look a little bit closer at the moon and he is there, of course. Or take a look at this picture of Silver in Crisis City. Take a look at the magazine advertisement in the corner and you will see none other than our favorite cat. There were exclusive Sonic Adventure trading cards during the game's release. During the release window of Sonic Adventure, a bunch of trading cards were released exclusive to Japan. And it featured tons of different things such as the 2D illustrations done by Yui Kawa with the character bios. Not only did it feature 2D illustrations, it also featured 3D renders as well. It wasn't just the characters, there was also artwork for the boss battles that you encountered, with descriptions of what they were on the back. There were even trading cards for the chows that you can get in the Chow Garden. And there was even a puzzle. Sonic Movie 2 makes a reference to Sonic Adventure. In Sonic Movie 2, during the dance battle scene, if you pause the frame for a second right here, you will see that Sonic hits this iconic pose, which is obviously a reference to the iconic Sonic Adventure box art where he strikes the hardest pose of all time. New Chaotix 30th Anniversary comic references the legendary Sonic CD meme. If you've been around on the internet long enough, at some point in time, you've probably seen this Sonic meme right here. The Sonic blank stare in the dark or Sonic CD title opening screen meme is an exploitable image macro of Sonic giving a death stare or a side-eye look when being surrounded by darkness. This image became the subject of memes in September 2022, particularly on Twitter and TikTok, where it's often used as a reaction image when a person shares a controversial opinion or hot take. Recently, IDW Comics released a Chaotix 30th Anniversary comic which features Sonic and Amy in it, and one of the panels in the comic features Amy Rose giving Sonic the death stare, which looks awfully familiar to the viral Sonic CD death stare meme. And speaking of Chaotix 30th Anniversary references and Sonic Adventure references, the 30th Anniversary also references Sonic and Amy's adventure poses. Take a look at the panel and look at Sonic and Amy's pose. This is directly pulled from their artwork from Sonic Adventure. Vampire Sonic recently made an appearance on the newest episode of Chow Tales. So, in the new animated Sonic short miniseries Chow Tales, we see Vampire Sonic. It's pretty cool that we see this costume because it's actually a reference to original Sonic Channel artwork, and over the years, this outfit has been referenced even in classic Sonic artwork, and it's recently become extremely popular when Vampire Sonic was released as a skin in the Roblox spin-off Sonic Speed Simulator. Since then, he's also been featured as a skin in Sonic Rumble. The new Sonic McLaren commercial references Sonic's iconic idle pose. So, in Sonic the Hedgehog 1, if you go AFK long enough, Sonic will sit there annoyed and tap his foot because he's impatient. It's not exclusive to Sonic 1, I mean, he does this in a lot of games, but regardless, it's something that everybody can recognize. McLaren and Sonic the Hedgehog have a new collab, and in this commercial or trailer, whatever you want to call it, it features some really smooth and polished animation, one of which shows Sonic's iconic impatient foot tapping idle animation. The Bio Lizard is referenced in Sonic Movie 3. If you play Sonic Adventure 2, obviously you know that the Bio Lizard is the final boss. The Bio Lizard is the failed ultimate life form prototype that eventually went rogue and caused chaos and destruction on the Ark. Leading up to the third Sonic the Hedgehog movie, knowing that it was going to take some inspiration from SA2, people were wondering as to whether or not the Bio Lizard would be the final boss of the movie as it is in the game. Turns out the Bio Lizard was not the final boss, but that doesn't mean the Bio Lizard wasn't in the movie. During one of the scenes when Shadow and Maria are watching a movie together, the monster that they see in the movie is actually based off of the Bio Lizard. That is definitely one of my favorite Sonic 3 Easter eggs. Sonic Mania references an animation from Knuckles Chaotix as well as Knuckles Chaotix prototype Sonic Crackers. Quick history lesson for you. Sonic Crackers Crackers is an early prototype of a Sonic the Hedgehog game for the Sega Mega Drive. It is believed that this was going to be an engine test for Knuckles Chaotix. And why do I think that? Well, I mean, if you look at the game mechanics here, Sonic and Tails are bound together by a ring, which obviously ended up being the primary gimmick for Knuckles Chaotix. In Sonic Mania in 2017, in the Chemical Plant Act 2 stage, there's a gimmick where Sonic can go up against the wall, and if you look at his animation, this animation right here is based off of Mighty the Armadillo's wall jump from Knuckles Chaotix, and also a similar animation was used in Sonic Crackers. Summer Sonic from Sonic Speed Simulator features an Easter egg that references Sonic X. This skin actually has a couple of Easter eggs. His shoes are the Lightspeed shoes from Sonic Adventure 1. As a matter of fact, the bottom of the shoes even say Sonic Adventure on them. In addition to some other things that this skin references, like the glasses that he wears on his head, which is yet another Sonic Adventure reference, you may notice a bracelet that Sonic is wearing on his wrist. This is a direct reference to Sonic X. In one of the episodes in the show, Amy makes a bracelet for Sonic when they go to the beach, and in one of the final frames of the episode, he actually wears it, which helps him swim better. And we know that this is an intentional Easter egg because according to Nibrock, the lead producer of the game, he said as much. The Dreamcast port for Half-Life was supposed to feature a Sonic the Hedgehog Easter egg. Half-Life was a first-person shooter game released by Valve in the late 90s, and they were supposed to have a port for the Sega Dreamcast. The Dreamcast port for this game was eventually canceled, but if it did make it out onto the console, it was going to feature this Sonic Adventure item right here, which means Sonic is canon to the Half-Life universe. When Sonic Movie 3 was the #1 movie in America, it made a reference to Sonic Adventure 2 in promotional artwork. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 certainly had a great run in the box office. It was the highest rated video game film of all time, and it's the highest grossing of the Sonic movie trilogy. In order to celebrate when this was the #1 movie in America, they released this artwork right here, which is super cool because it references the Sonic Adventure 2 box art, where if you look at these poses right here, in addition to the background colors, it's obviously indistinguishable. What a great reference. The Sonic Frontiers prologue comic references Sonic Adventure. In the pre-release of Sonic Frontiers, a digital comic called Sonic Frontiers Convergence was released, and it shows Sonic, Tails, and Amy fighting against Dr. Eggman, and some of the lines that he says is, "Get a load of this," "No way, I can't believe this," "All systems full power," and it turns out that it's not actually Dr. Eggman, but the lines that he says are direct references to the lines that he says during the Sonic Adventure 1 boss battles. Sonic Superstars references the Eggmobiles from Sonic 1, 2, 3, and CD. So, in Sonic Superstars, there's a mission where you can actually use the Eggmobile. Depending on which character you play as, the Eggmobile model will actually change. But this change is not random. The Eggmobile that you use is going to be based off of how it looks in the debut game of the character that you're playing. So Sonic 1, 2, 3, and CD all get their individual representation based off of the model of the vehicle that Eggman drives in the respective games. The new Sonic McLaren collab references poses from Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Coming back yet again to this animation, when Sonic and Tails first walk into the building, there's one quick little frame where they hit this pose together, but this is no coincidence. This is a direct reference to the title screen of the original Sonic the Hedgehog 2 game for the Sega Genesis. Sonic Movie 1 makes a reference to Super Smash Bros. In the final battle of the first Sonic movie, when Sonic is running away from Dr. Robotnik, trying not to get shot by him, in the middle of him dodging the missiles, he strikes this pose right here, which looks awfully familiar to his render from Super Smash Bros. The android shadows that appear in the IDW comics are actually from the original Shadow the Hedgehog game. So in the IDW comics, there are android versions of Shadow the Hedgehog. There's also a bunch of different colors of them, but these are not unique to specifically the IDW franchise. Android shadows also rose to prominence when they were released as skins in Sonic Speed Simulator before the actual Shadow the Hedgehog skin was added to the game. But this concept is not unique to Sonic Speed Simulator or IDW. These were actually originally featured in the two-player multiplayer mode of the infamous Shadow the Hedgehog video game that released in 2005. In Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, Tails references the Sonic OVA. In 1996, we got an all-time iconic animation called the Sonic OVA movie. Metal Sonic in particular was the antagonist of the film, and hopefully we get some elements that are inspired from this in the actual Sonic the Hedgehog 4 movie. Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, when Tails is going up against Metal Sonic, this is his dialogue.
I'm not scared of you. I trained off of all of Sonic's experiences, so I already know what you're gonna do. Strange, isn't it?
And this is obviously a reference to this scene in the Sonic OVA.
You might know everything I'm going to do, but that's not going to help you, since I know everything you're going to do. Strange, isn't it?
Extreme Rider skins from Sonic Rumble are a reference to Sonic Rider's concept art. So in Sonic Rumble, you have Extreme Rider Sonic, Extreme Rider Tails, and Extreme Rider Amy, but these are not unique to just Sonic Rumble. They do also happen to appear in Sonic Speed Simulator. This is a reference to Sonic Rider's concept art. If you look here, the characters look a little bit different than how they looked in the final version of the game. In the IDW comics, Classic Sonic makes a reference to the fact that he can't rail grind. So in one of the IDW Classic Sonic specials, you'll see Sonic running by grind rails, and he says, "I wonder if I could balance on those. Might need to practice with some special shoes first. I'll give it a shot one day." This is clearly a reference to the fact that rail grinding wasn't introduced into Sonic Adventure 2 and also Sonic wearing the soap shoes in this game, which I guess is technically now the canonical reason for how he learned how to grind. Although he was able to grind in Sonic Superstar, so I guess that's all thrown out the window. Either way, cool reference. Here's the first detail: finding Metal Sonic in Eggman's lab in Sonic Adventure. As Sonic traverses through the Mystic Ruins, hops on a minecart, and stumbles upon this beautiful jungle, as you progress through the story, Eggman builds a base in this area. At some point in the story, Sonic actually has to head into the base, and if you explore around this base for a little bit, you will stumble upon Metal Sonic. While Metal isn't featured in the actual story of the game, it's really cool to see that continuity of him being locked up in Eggman's lab, presumably getting tweaks and upgrades to get stronger. Because if you think about it, Metal Sonic was originally made to match Classic Sonic, but now Sonic is starting to grow up a little bit, which in turn is why there technically is a classic Metal Sonic who looks like this, and now a modern Metal Sonic that looks like this. He's a little bit taller to match his counterpart. Furthermore, another neat detail is that we also see Mecha Sonic in here as well. His first appearance was in Sonic 2, so you just really love to see that continuity and world building that Sega was doing around this time. The attention to detail is absolutely incredible. Here's the next detail: finding other characters in the adventure field. I always thought Sonic Adventure was by far the most immersive Sonic game. One of the coolest things in this game is finding other characters in the hub world, and speaking to them can provide context for where they are in their own respective stories. As you all know, in Adventure, there are 6 intertwining stories, so each one has things that are happening off screen, so these moments do provide some of that context. For example, when Sonic and Tails are leaving the casino level, and then Eggman sprays them with some type of like poison that in turn makes them fall asleep. And then in Knuckles' campaign, you'll see Sonic and Tails sleeping on the side of the street. Stuff like this adds to the immersion of the experience, and it just makes it feel like the things that you do in the story do matter. But to take it even a step further, the human characters also provide a lot of context for what's going on in the story too. You might walk up to one of the NPCs and see someone say, "You can see Robotnik's fallen airship in the sea. It still hasn't sunk, it's just floating there." Which at this point in the story, Sonic hops on the boat over here, and then you can return to the egg carrier. Or here's an even better example. I have a cleared campaign, so if I go over to the newsstand right here, it'll say that Tails did much better than I expected. I think he's much stronger now than before. The reason why this character said this is because this is when Tails defeated Eggman in Station Square, so all the people know that Tails is now a hero. Even if you're playing Sonic's campaign, you might not have known that that's happening, but the world building is certainly there. You know, unfortunately, they kind of threw all that away in future Sonic games for whatever reason, like Tails already went through his arc, but that's a conversation for a different video. Here's another detail: the objectives of the levels changing depending on where you are in the campaign in Sonic Adventure. So here's a great example of this. In Emerald Coast, after you beat Sonic's story and you return to the level, you'll notice that there's an animal capsule at the end of the stage. The story of Sonic Adventure starts off with Tails crashing his plane onto Emerald Coast.
Watch out! You're gonna crash! Ah!
But if you're playing a fresh campaign and you go into Emerald Coast, you'll see Tails crashed on the side of the beach with his tornado there. By the way, don't ask me why there's a Tails next to me. Or during other times of the story, the objective is to chase down a Chaos Emerald. So instead of the animal capsule, you'll actually go and collect the emerald in the stage. These dynamic, ever-changing objectives that adapt to where you are in the story, once again, is the reason why Sonic Adventure is one of the most immersive Sonic games. I don't like the game just for the gameplay. It's the little details like this that really make me appreciate it. In future Sonic games, they kind of phase this out by just opting for going into goal rings and then progressing the story off camera, but Adventure is like this fleshed out world. Ironically, even though Sonic Forces is a very hated Sonic game, they actually brought some of this back. Like for example, Sunset Heights, you run into Shadow. When you complete Metropolitan Highway, Eggman is waiting for you at the end of the stage. But the little things like this are things I'd love to see in future Sonic games. Here's the next detail: finding Big the Cat hidden in Sonic stages. For whatever reason, Sega just loves hiding Big the Cat in random Sonic Adventure 2 stages. stages. Some of the locations where you find him is just so ridiculous. There's even some instances where you can make him appear in cutscenes, like he's on the Ark for whatever reason. But this isn't exclusive to just SA2. Somehow, Big has snuck his way into Sonic and the Secret Rings. Throughout several missions in the game, you'll see him somehow finding himself in trouble. In Sonic Heroes, you can find references to Neo Metal Sonic in Hang Castle. In Sonic Heroes, there's several boss battles against Dr. Eggman, and it's presumed that he's like the final villain of the game. But it turns out that those Eggmans are actually fake, and the real villain that you fight is Neo Metal Sonic. It turns out that the real plot twist is that Neo Metal Sonic is in it for himself, and he even betrays Dr. Eggman. Being that Sonic Heroes was my first ever Sonic game, all this was kind of surprising to me because I had no idea who the hell Metal Sonic even was at the time. So in Hang Castle, there's a giant statue of Dr. Eggman, but there's a mechanic in the level that turns the stage upside down. So when you turn the Dr. Eggman statue upside down, you will notice that Neo Metal Sonic is on the other side of this statue. It's great foreshadowing when you look back on it. Obviously, I didn't pick up on this because I didn't know who Metal Sonic even was when I first played the game, but nonetheless, this is certainly one of my favorite details of Sonic Heroes. In Sonic Unleashed, the Pelicans will guide you back to the track. Sonic Unleashed is certainly a game full of...
Here we go!
But have you ever taken a second to stop and just slow down for a second? So in Sonic Unleashed, let's say you somehow got your way off the path and you're going extremely slow, not tapping the boost button. You might run into this pelican right here. If you walk up to him and let's say maybe you give him a nice little kick or something, he will direct you back to where the track is. We got another pelican over here, so let's give him a nice little tap, and he's gonna tell us to go this way. Even though we hit him, he's kind enough to guide us back to our way. Sonic Unleashed is full of incredible little details like this, and it just goes to show how much love was put into this game when they made it. In Sonic Unleashed, if you go to Spagonia at nighttime, you can hear somebody singing the theme song of the game. If you enter into Spagonia and take the first right into this alleyway, walk up to this window. If you go into the settings and turn the music volume down to 0, which almost feels like a crime because the OST of this game is incredible, this is what you will hear. I'm sure this guy doesn't appreciate us eavesdropping on him, so let's get the hell out of here. Sonic Superstars, depending on which character you're playing, you will see the other playable characters in the background. Sonic Superstars is a game that I feel like kind of gets a bad rap. Despite the bad rap that it gets, there's a lot of neat qualities about the game that I do like. For example, if you're playing as Sonic, you might run into Amy in the back of the stage. I also like that the cameos to the other characters feel accurate to what those characters would be doing at that point in time in the story. For example, in the Sky Temple level, you'll see Knuckles gliding in the background. Or let's say you're playing as Amy in Speed Jungle, you might see Sonic and Tails running in the background behind you as well. But let's say this time you're only playing as Tails, you'll see Sonic running in the background by himself. So it's these little details that I just find really interesting about the game. And this happens all throughout the campaign. I'm not going to sit here and do every single one, but it's a nice little touch that acknowledges the fact that 5 different characters are playable in the story. Or one of my favorites, you might run into the infamous creepypasta Tails doll from Sonic R in the background. Here's another detail that I love about Sonic games: the randomized weather in Sonic R and how it affects the racetrack. In Sonic R, some of the levels feature water, and if you go in it, it's going to slow your character down, and also he kind of like submerges himself under it, which if you're trying to win a race can definitely get in the way. Since the game has a randomized weather system, which by the way kind of just adds a little bit of flair into the tracks, one of the really neat details about this is that the water in the stage turns solid and you can run on top of it. So you know, it actually could be pretty beneficial to the player. Instead of slowing them down, it provides a little bit of a different way to play. There's over 1,000 lines of dialogue and 500 character interactions in Sonic Racing Crossworlds. So this is obviously fresh in everyone's mind. It's not obscure. If you've been paying attention to the franchise for the last month or so, you know about this. But I would just like to say how awesome it is that we have all these different character interactions in Racing Crossworlds. You get to hear characters that you would otherwise never see interact in the Sonic franchise, some of them even interacting for the first time. And they get to acknowledge the character dynamics between the two. They get to acknowledge past adventures that some of the characters have had. And I promise you, the general audience would not have been swayed one way or the other if they didn't do this. This was a detail they included exclusively for the fans, so there's no way that I could leave this out as one of my favorite details in the entire Sonic franchise. In Sonic and Mario at the Olympic Games, certain characters would have unique victory animations. Before there were Sonic Racing Crossworlds interactions, we had interactions in Sonic and Mario at the Olympic Games. In a similar fashion to how certain characters would interact with each other in that game, you would see the unique character dynamics in play in this game too with the cutscenes. You love to see Dr. Eggman and Bowser, the two big bad villains interacting with each other and having a little fun. I think one of my favorites is the one between Shadow and Silver. The reason why is because it seems like they kind of have this beef with each other, so I wonder if it's a reference to this.
Chaos control! You!
Sonic Rush, if you tap on Sonic using the Nintendo DS screen, Sonic will have an idle animation. So Sonic Rush is the first Sonic game on the Nintendo DS, and it's a game that's beloved by the fans. The Nintendo DS had 2 screens, one of which being a touchscreen, which was pretty revolutionary for the time. And I guess to showcase how cool it was, one of the neat details that not many people know about is that if you tap Sonic, this animation will play. They didn't need to put this in the game, but little things like this, again, are just extremely cool. Sonic Lost World, the CGI cutscene to level transition of Tails Tornado. So Sonic Lost World is one of those games that, you know, I don't really have a lot of great things to say about it, but there's one thing that I always found kind of cool. So the opening cutscene of this game features Sonic and Tails chasing Dr. Eggman on the tornado, and by the end of the cutscene, you see Sonic and Tails speeding on the tornado towards the Lost Hex, which has a perfectly smooth transition into the gameplay, where you actually see Tails flying past you on his tornado with the in-game model. This isn't that crazy, but seeing the transition from Tails' tornado in the cutscene to actually being in the level when he flies past you is like a very small but immersive detail that I really enjoyed.